Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is November 17th, 2017, and we are just so very excited to have with us a new artist who's emerged onto the scene of sort of Mormon culture. And in some sense, he's not a new artist. In some sense, he's been around a while. But today, we're going to be celebrating the music of Weird Alma. Weird Alma is the sort of artistic name of our guest today. His name is Eric.
Hello.
Eric Herman. Is that okay to say it, or do we not want to say it?
Eric Herman and Weird Alma, they are two distinct personalities. Have you seen the movie Split?
Oh, no. Tell me about that.
It's a multiple personality.
So who are we interviewing today?
And maybe a little of both. You never know who you're going to get at a certain time.
Okay. Well, we're interviewing Weird Alma / Eric about this new album. The album is called Straight Outta Cumorah. And there are so far 8 songs that have been released, and they're hilarious, they're intelligent, and the music in them is actually quite sophisticated. I'm really impressed. So today we're going to be bringing to you the music of Weird Alma, and we're actually going to play it as we interview Eric, because it looks like Zoom lets us do that. So I'm going to go ahead and play the first song from the album, which is called Taperback Writer. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to actually be interviewing Eric along the way, hear about his story, hear about his motives, why he's doing this album, what it means to him, and then we'll also be playing songs as we go and discussing the content of each song. How does that sound, Eric?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, so let's play the first song from Straight Outta Cumorah by Weird Alma called Taperback Writer. Here we go.
Taperback Writer. Dear Mormons, wait before you leave the pews. I have an article in the Deseret News. It explains how back in ancient Nephite times they didn't have horses, so they had to be taperback riders. Taperback Rider. It might be hard for you to get this thing. It's an explanation known as loan shifting. Joseph didn't know what a taper was, so he said they rode horses, but they really all were taperback riders. Taperback Rider. Taperback Rider. You might be thinking something isn't right. Was the Book of Mormon translation loose or tight? If Curulons, Cumons, and C9s are words, then why couldn't Joseph just have used the term taperback riders? Taperback Rider. I warn you, that sounds like apostasy. I have PhDs, so you should trust in me. It'll all make sense if you believe it's true. If you have any questions, look me up. My name is Taper Dan Writer. Taper Dan Writer. Taperback Writer. On my C9s.
That is Weird Alma with the first track on his album, Straight Outta Cumorah, Taperback Writer. And we've got Weird Alma with us today. We're really excited. So I'm just going to begin by saying, I don't know if you know this about me, but I grew up listening to parodies. And so it started with Tom Lear, who was a Harvard trained mathematician who wrote really brilliant satire and parodies in the late 50s and 60s. I followed that up with Alan Sherman, who was this incredible parody writer in the 60s and early 70s, who did Hello Mutta, Hello Fata, Here I Am at Camp Granada, lots of songs. And then I grew up listening to Weird Al. As a kid, I've been to Weird Al's concerts twice. I love his work. And then I listened to Dr. Demento as a BYU student in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I love satire and parody. So Weird Alma, do you have any of those as influences in your life?
Yeah, Lear and Sherman, I've heard at different points. I'm not as familiar with them, but I'm a little younger than you, I guess. But so what hit me as I was growing up, Dr. Demento also, he's been going forever, and things like SNL would do parodies. It wasn't always music parodies. Sometimes it was parodies of commercials and things. Monty Python, The Simpsons, do a lot of parody type stuff in their work. And then, Weird Al obviously would be huge influence on this work in particular.
So were there any albums or songs by Weird Al that you just loved growing up that meant a lot to you?
Well, I've really gotten into him, especially more the last maybe 5 or 6 years. One thing I didn't realize about him is how well some of his non-parodies work. I've been a big Frank Zappa fan most of my life, and he does a song called Genius in France. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's not a parody, but it's a what he would call a style parody. And you listen to it and you pick up all of these kind of references to Zappa, and it's brilliant.
I think he does a song that parodies the Talking Heads called Dog Eat Dog, which isn't a direct parody of like Same as It Ever Was or whatever that song is.
Right.
But you get the Talking Heads sense from it. Is that what you mean? Yeah,
and They Might Be Giants. I'm trying to think of the name of that one. It's brilliant. So in the last several years, I've I always appreciated him. Okay, he does these funny parodies, Eat It, and Like a Surgeon and all that. But I think I really came to love Weird Al when I discovered all the other stuff that he does. He's really just a brilliant composer and writer and satirist all around.
Okay, so I have to just jump in and ask you, how did you get the musical instruments on Taperback Writer to be so accurate and reflective of Paperback Writer by the Beatles? I mean, it sounded like you had, George and Paul in the studio.
Okay, so I'm going to your estimation of me is going to drop.
No, it won't. No, it won't.
There is a website that you can just kind of buy the backing tracks for, and I could do this. I have in the past. My wife and I, 20 years ago, we did a parody of Sgt. Pepper, the whole album. Based on our dog, who was named Sgt. Pepper. Basically, that album through the eyes of a dog. It wasn't the whole album, but like each song had a little thing, and it was just a fun, silly side thing. And we did record all the instruments, and but that took a long time. This project is it was more of a lark, really. And the idea of the songs, I had a lot of fun doing that and creating that. I didn't want to spend hours and hours recording all the instruments. So I believe it's karaoke something -.com.
But even so, there's really good harmonies. So you have to know music, right?
Well, I do know music.
So tell us quickly. Tell us a little bit about your background professionally. Whatever you want to tell us.
Yeah, well, picked up a guitar at age 13, and that changed my life, man. At that time, I wanted to be the next Van Halen, right? That was the thing at the time. And I was good, a couple of years I could play a lot of that stuff. And at a certain point, I realized there's always somebody flashier and with better hair, and I don't know. The whole thing of the guitar god thing really just lost interest in me. And it was really around that time, I was maybe 15, 16, that I really heard stuff like the Beatles. You know, I'd heard it before in the elevators and station wagons growing up, but I never really listened or felt it. You know, Beatles, Pink Floyd, and at the time stuff like U2 was coming on, and REM and stuff like that I really got into. So it changed my view of music at that point, from trying to be some flashy guitar player to using guitar and instruments to serve songs, you know. And then from there, I played in bands, in a lot of different bands, played in coffee shops, singer-songwriter kind of stuff. And then at a certain point, 2002, 15 years at this point, somebody suggested I should do music for kids. And at the time I thought, you're crazy. I don't want to be Barney or whatever, you know. And long story short, that has been my job for the last 15 years.
What do you mean you do music for kids?
Well, if you look up,
is it like Raffi?
A little bit. I mean, I do, you know, all different styles of music, you know, rock music. But yeah, with kids
Go ahead. Well, what's your most popular song? I'll actually play it right now.
Yeah, the Elephant Song. That's easy.
Is that on YouTube?
It is.
So tell us about this song.
Well, it's all about elephants.
And what's your artistic name? Do you go by Eric? What do you go by?
Eric Herman, Herman.
Okay, so that's what I searched. Okay, tell us about the song one more time, and then I'll play it.
Well, it was supposed to be a serious song at the time. This is before I really got into doing kids music. I'd watched this documentary about elephants, and I thought, oh, this is beautiful. These two elephants had been separated at a young age and came back together later, and they still knew each other, and they had this great bond. I got to write a meaningful song about that, and I came up with a guitar part for it, but I could never get lyrics. And my wife, she heard me working on this song forever, and she knew it was about elephants, and she started making fun of me when she'd hear that music. And at one point she said, "Elephants, I like elephants." And I said, "No, quiet, I'm working on this." But some kind of light bulb struck there. And I thought, wait, I was thinking about maybe trying the kids music thing. Maybe this could work for that. And when I started doing kids music, playing some shows out, I learned a bunch of these different songs, but something about that song, boy, kids just went crazy. If you play it, you'll see what I mean.
No, I'm about to play it.
Oh, okay.
But I just noticed it's got 30 million views.
Yeah.
That is massive. 30 million?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy crap.
YouTube featured the video in like 2007 or something.
All right. Well, let's play the Elephant Song.
Or maybe a part of it. Yeah.
You tell me when to stop, by Eric Herman. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Elephants, I like elephants. Elephants, I like elephants. I like how they swing through trees. Elephants. What?
Elephants don't swing through trees.
They don't? Well, what am I thinking of?
Monkeys.
Oh, well, in that case. Monkeys, I like monkeys. I like how they swim in the ocean.
No,
I like...
that's fish.
Oh, I see. Fish. I like fish. I like how they scratch at fleas and sniff at trees and bark at the mailman. No.
Those are dogs.
Ah. Gotta like dogs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Curled up on the windowsill, purring and chasing mice.
No.
What then?
Cats.
Cats, of course. Cats. I like cats. I like how they say cock-a-doodle-doo.
No.
All right.
They go meow.
They do.
You're thinking of roosters.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good.
Roosters, I
All right, I think we get the sense that is really quality music, and it's funny, it's witty. Who did the animation on that video?
That was my dear wife, Rosanne.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, today's her birthday.
And, happy birthday to Rosanne. That's her name?
She's not with us anymore. She passed away 4 years ago.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
But that's her work. She was amazing, and I'm happy to just merely mention her name today and tell a little bit of her story, because she's an amazing part of what I've done, a big part of that. And she had this idea one day. I could make a video for this song. Let me show you a little demo. She did that on Microsoft Paint.
Yeah, I could tell.
I mean, just like it wasn't meant to be the actual video. She just did this thing in like an hour and shows it to me. And I said, yeah, that's pretty good. So I don't know, can we hire somebody to like actually make it animated or something, more than that? Well, thankfully we showed it to a couple friends and they said, no, leave it like it is. My kid just watched that 20 times in a row. Something about the simplicity of it, worked great for kids. And, we were thinking she was a little embarrassed by it when it got, became successful, because she would have maybe done something a little bit more elaborate, but I think it's brilliant. And she was brilliant and constantly doing little things like that.
That's awesome. Well, shout out to Rosanne. Is that her name?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you for sharing her story. How many albums have you done as a child songwriter?
Well, 8 CDs and 2 DVDs at this point.
And I only know like Raffi. Where would you rank like relative to Raffi in terms of like popularity or commercial success? Is he the standard? Is he not the standard? Well,
I would say the Wiggles are bigger,
Okay.
But I kind of hit the wave of this new movement sort of in kids music that came around about the mid 2000s, 2004, 2005, where it was more, it speaks to a kid's sensibility, but also parents don't necessarily mind hearing it 100 times.
Right.
And I'm in that field, I'm reasonably well known, but I'd say there's the Wiggles, there's Raffi, Imagination Movers, Justin Roberts, Recess Monk. I'm kind of below that, maybe in the next tier down or whatever, but it's been a full-time job for 15 years now, and I can't complain, man.
And you're still doing it? You're still doing it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm done for the winter, essentially, but...
Okay. Let's talk about Taperback Rider really quick before we play some more songs. So
sure.
Tell us about why, what was the inspiration behind that song, and what are your favorite parts about it and why?
Well, like a lot of parodies, it starts maybe with just a pun, taper. Okay. What can I do? Taper sounds like paper. All right. Oh, boom. And initially the thought was, so many of these songs are very, very inside baseball to not even Mormons, but also kind of the ex-Mormon community, I guess. Where Dan Peterson, is referred to as Taper Dan, affectionately referred to as Taper Dan, for being someone who was a proponent of that idea. I don't know that he was the first. But in any case, he got that nickname, and originally I was thinking of writing the song
Taper Dan, right? Taper Dan Peterson as the ambassador for old style Mormon apologetics, giving bad scientific answers to problems with Mormon history. And so somebody says, well, okay, there weren't horses in Native America during the time of the Book of Mormon. Maybe they meant tapers when they rode horses. And so,
right. And I
Dan.
Find that a little silly, so I figured I'd write a silly song. And originally the whole thing was going to be Taper Dan Writer. And then I kind of realized it might be funnier and also explore the idea a little bit better to have it also a pun on writer to rider. And, to picture the actual, Nephite warriors riding across the plains on these cute little tapers. Well,
but it's also a little bit sophisticated. So you get into this idea of loan shifting. Talk about that.
Okay. Well, that is the apologetic term for it. I considered myself an amateur apologist for many years in the church, followed a lot of that stuff, and that's kept me going. But so I wanted to, with some of these songs, I want to present an argument, essentially. So I want to also give the other side of it. And yeah, of course, I'm biased to the one side that I have now, but I hopefully represented that side well enough. That's the idea. Loan shifting means if somebody is translating a work and they don't know what a thing is, they use a word from their current time that they do know. So if there's some animal, you don't know what that animal is, well, it kind of could be, what do I know? A horse. Okay, I'm going to write horse instead.
Right. Brilliant.
And I think that would make sense if the Book of Mormon could be a loose translation, but that's one of the things I mentioned later.
So talk about what loose versus tight translation, where does that come from?
Right.
Isn't that Blake Ostler's work?
I'm not sure. It might be, yeah.
Yeah, it's just this idea that Joseph didn't translate word for word, but instead he would just get ideas or stories in his head and then write them in his own vernacular, right?
Right, and I think that would actually be closer to what a real translation might be. If you really had something, you would write it in your vernacular. However, every eyewitness account we have from the Book of Mormon, and Joseph Smith himself, when he's talking about the 116 pages story, all speak to a very tight translation.
Meaning literal word for word. A word appears, he writes it down. Yeah. Another word appears, he writes it down. Yeah.
Emma said that. Martin Harris, I believe, maybe David Whitner, I can't remember specifically, but 3 or 4 different people said he would see words on the stone. He would say those specific words. He would even double check that the scribe wrote it accurately. And then Joseph Smith, the story of the 116 pages, after those were lost, and God says that we need to redo those, not the same, but from these other conveniently included plates, because evil men would change them, change what you had on those 116 pages. Well, that implies that he would have redone it exactly the same.
Right. Exactly.
If the evil men would have changed it, I think if he had that opportunity right at the time to say, translation, it's a little bit, here and there, a little bit wonky. I think that would have served that story better from the faithful perspective.
So we'll get into this in a bit, but it sounds like you've had a Mormon faith crisis. Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk about it, because not only that, but it sounds like you've really thought through and studied these issues. So that's a significant deal, right?
For me, it was. Yeah, it took a long time. I hung on by many threads for a number of years, but yeah.
I'll just mention our listeners are joining in. I want to encourage our listeners on Facebook Live to join us. Astrid says she can't stop singing Paperback Writer. I agree. I had Paperback Writer in my head all night because of you. Chelsea says her kids love the song. Bar Jonas says, the tender mercies of these songs fill my soul with exceeding great joy. So lots of positive comments. I do want to read one comment from Brent Metcalf. Do you know who Brent Metcalf is?
By reputation, I don't know him.
The famous Brent Metcalf, who who hot tub jacuzzied with Mark Hoffman himself.
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh.
Expert on Book of Abraham. He writes, Weird Alma is a very clever parody. My wife Erin and I wrote some lyrics for Rock Me Onondagas several years back. Think the discernment of Zelf. I'd love to hear what Weird Alma would come up with on Rock Me Onondagas. So there's a request for another song.
A challenge, okay.
All right, so let's hear a second song on Straight Outta Cumorah by Weird Alma. And the song is called You're Several Months Shy of 15. Tell us a little bit about this song before we listen.
Well, I didn't think that You're 16, You're Beautiful in Your Mind by Ringo Starr could get any creepier. But, here it is, I guess.
So tell us about the original song.
You haven't heard that?
You're 15, you're beautiful, and you're mine.
Yeah.
He writes it as an adult, right?
Well, yeah, I think Ringo was 33 or something at the time. Now, here's the thing. When I was growing up, I never thought of that song as creepy because I was 8 or 9 when I'm hearing that. I'm thinking, yeah, 16-year-olds are hot, But after some years, it kind of dawned on me, wait a minute. That's not great. But I tell you, of all of the ones, this one just kind of wrote itself here because right in the original song, it talks about angel divine, so that made it easy. All
right. So I'm guessing we're going to hear some Joseph Smith underage wife references here.
Perhaps, yeah. And there's an outro here that I had fun with. It kind of goes off on some different tangents, but I had a lot of fun doing
All
that.
right, so let's listen to You're Several Months Shy of 15 off the Straight Outta Cumorah album by Weird Alma. Here we go.
I'm the prophet Joe Smith, I beseech you forthwith to be my wife number 29. You're several months shy of 15, and you're dutiful, so be mine. If you don't, I'll be floored by a big flaming sword, wielded by an angel divine. You're several months shy of 15, and you're dutiful, so be mine. You're my baby, practically, you're my boo. Since you were 11, I've been grooming you. I know you're devout, so you should have no doubt. But ooh, please don't let Emma find out. If you marry me, I'll exalt your family. I'll talk crap about you if you decline. You're several months shy of 15. You're dutiful, so be mine. You're several months shy of 15. You're dutiful, so be mine. By the way, my darling girl, would you mind burning this recording after you listen to it? You see, we don't want...
Excuse me, sir. Burning audio...
Oh, that's right. Thank you, William. Darling, that's my secretary, William Clayton. Right, so burning an audio file means to make a copy of it, and that's the opposite of what I want. So, tell you what, my dear, burn the email that I sent you with that record.
Sir, you can't burn email.
You can't burn an email? Well, hell. Then you know what, my dearest Nancy. Sarah, my dearest Sarah. I hate to ask you to do this, but how about you just destroy your whole computer? Destroy it like a printing press, that's what I say. That usually solves everything.
Sir, the cloud?
Ah, the email will still be in the cloud. Well, it doesn't matter anyway. Who's going to go poking around for that?
Fawn Brody, Mormon League.
Some days I wish I had stuck with the treasure-seeking thing. Oh, that reminds me, William.
Yes?
For next week's schedule, let's set aside that Kinderhook translation for now. There's another writing project I'd like to start working on. I call it Illinois Smith and the Raiders of the Sinking Indian Treasures.
That's brilliant, sir, brilliant.
Yes. Oh, and in other business, did I tell you what happened with those enemies of the church that visited Nauvoo last week?
No, you didn't, but sir, we should probably stop the recording.
What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course.
Oh, that's more than you should really say, sir.
Well, I didn't kill them, but
When you have Danites, might as well use them, right? Those guys will slit a throat for a ham sandwich.
That is You're Several Months Shy of 15 by Weird Alma on the album Straight Outta Cumorah. I'm hearing some Mr. Deity in there. Is Mr. Deity an influence for that song?
No, I don't. I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, Mr. Deity was the series by Brian Keith Dalton that was out on YouTube probably 5 or 8 years ago, where Brian Keith Dalton plays God, but he has this annoying assistant with a clipboard. And so it shows God up in heaven, like designing the world, and he designs the world with like polio and child abuse and hurricanes. And his assistant's like, do we need sort of, genocide? Can we go ahead and design the world without genocide? And God's like, oh, you're so annoying. Why are you always asking these hard questions? Anyway, check out Mr. Deity, and you'll hear similitude with that song.
I think I was going for a Smithers and Mr. Burns thing.
Oh, that works. Yeah, that works too.
And hearing it just now, I think my Joseph Smith, I was copying Jay Peterman from Seinfeld. I don't know if you...
Yeah, of course.
The kind of attitude he has. Well, that should take care of everything.
Elaine's boss, right?
Yeah, right.
So somebody wrote, let's see, Michael writes, it's funny and makes me want to cry at the same time. Talk about the role of parody, because on the one hand, that's just this festive, jovial, happy song. And then in reality, it's talking about stuff that's like seriously awful and depressing. Talk about the strategy or the role of parody in your approach.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And this song, I think, hits that right on the nose in a difficult way. Some of the other ones were pretty straightforward. I'm trying to make a point here. This one, boy, it's everything in there is real. I don't know. I've questioned whether I should do this. I mean, I write music. I create music. This was a huge part of my life. The thing I went through, the faith transition, it was bound to come out somehow or other. But this song in particular made me question, am I getting a little bit snarky, or am I taking it a little bit farther than I should? Or, and if people who know me, if they find out I'm doing this, how are they going to react? But what kept me doing it was the fact that this was real. I everything in this song, 29 brides. I mean, I'm cracking jokes, but I'm 29 brides, the flaming sword, the manipulation there, don't tell Emma, I'll exalt your family. I'll talk crap about you if you decline. Burn this letter. It's all there, and it's all documented, and it's all real. And I will stand behind my. I hope, if anything, I guess I wonder, should I make fun of it, or does the song make light of it? I don't know, because it is serious.
It's particularly sobering in the time of like post Harvey Weinstein era, right? Al Franken. Yeah. Like, sure. We're dealing with these issues right now about sexual harassment, sexual abuse, right?
Right. I just saw the thing yesterday. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Rachel Jeffs, I want to say, Warren Jeffs.
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah, the interview.
Oh my gosh, with Megyn Kelly, and I was just floored, just watching this, and to realize, I know a lot of people will watch something like that and say, well, Warren Jeffs he's a false version of what's real. He's a false, what's the word I'm looking for? Imposter of what the real church is, or what a real prophet is. You know what? No. If anything, he's closer, Warren Jeffs, to what the original thing was, to Joseph Smith. A lot of those details in there. And it, boy, the obedience from a young age, obedience. A prophet is always right. controlling their sexual habits, their how they eat and sleep and all that stuff. It's right there, and it's the same in the LDS institutional church. More so earlier,
Right.
but it was definitely a part of that. So
Yeah, no, it's heavy stuff, right? I mean, it's so weird. Even can you hear me?
yeah.
It's so weird even to go from something so fun and jovial to a discussion so seriously. But that's I'll just
I think a lot of people would say that Satire best covers some of that. Because it makes it slightly more palatable to at least confront or to okay, I'm entertained by this. At least I'm willing to listen to it, and then maybe later you think about it or think about it from a different perspective.
Yeah, Chelsea, who's one of our most devoted listeners, she writes, "There's something so cathartic about parody, being able to mock something that's not funny and even painful. It feels so good." She writes, "When the November policy happened, my first reaction was to write a song parody about it." So there's something powerful and magical about parody, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the familiar too. Someone, you quoted before, people are saying, "Oh, Tinkerback Rider, it's so catchy." Well, all of that goes to, John and Paul, all of that credit. I'm just repurposing it a little bit,
Sure.
with some different words and a different approach. But I agree. It can be powerful because it's part of our culture. It's part of, we know these songs. I try to be somewhat broad in the songs I'm picking, for that reason, that people would have heard them before. Maybe it's not your favorite song. A lot of these aren't my favorite songs either, but I've heard them my whole life.
They fit, yeah.
They're familiar and they fit, yeah.
Yeah. Mark, my buddy in the UK, writes, "Parody and satire played a big part of my early faith crisis. The website that is now salamandersociety.com made me think in a new light of the brethren." Brant writes, "I think laughing about these topics is great therapy. For me, it's much better than letting anger persist."
Great.
All right, so let's play the third song. This third song is called "Book of Mormon Evidence." Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro before we play it?
No, it's a very short song. You can just play it.
I'll just play it. Here we go. This is "Book of Mormon Evidence" from the digital album Straight Outta Cumorah by Weird Alma. "Book of Mormon Evidence." All right. I love this one. Here we go.
Book of Mormon Evidence, the apologist showed to me all about Chiasmus and HM and that's it. How about maybe not really. No, not really. That's all you got, huh?
I think you had two versions of that going or something.
Oh, did you hear two versions?
Yeah. It's okay.
I only heard one version.
Oh, well, hopefully everyone else did too, but I was hearing two slightly overlapping. It was kind of freaky, man.
Oh, no, I'm super sorry. I hope that wasn't too annoying. The audience on Facebook can tell us if they heard two versions or one. Yeah. If there's two, then I got to figure that out. But it basically said, the lyrics are very brief. "Book of Mormon Evidence that apologist showed to me." It's a parody of the Book of Mormon Stories primary song. And he says all about Chiasmus, NHM, and that's pretty much it. Talk to us about what you're meaning by that.
Well, for one thing, I'm exaggerating. There are more things that people could point to. For one thing, I'll do a blanket statement. All of these songs, fair. You don't need to come and do a rebuttal of them all. Okay, I know they're not meant to be comprehensive, takedowns of things, but those, I think, as we look at Book of Mormon Evidence, as I did for years, I hung on that stuff. The Chiasmus, boy, that was a big deal. Alma 36, You know, it's a beautiful chapter. I think it's written very well. And wow, what do you know? It does do that thing where it goes the one direction and comes back the other direction, and the verses line up. When put into a compelling article that's faith promoting, look at this. This is evidence of ancient style of writing. Here it is, Alma chapter 36. Look at that. It was compelling. You know, that helped keep me in, I think, for a number of years where I might not have. That alone, in some respects, because you look for other evidence. But, you know, there are other things I would include. We have found other examples of writing on metal plates, not big books of it, but, you know, mostly that song I'm going for comedy.
Yeah, I know, of course. Yeah.
Although in an exaggerated sense, I think there's something to it, you know, and it's more, maybe a little bit poking fun at apologists who those are the go-tos, you know, NHM, boy, that was a huge, huge thing when it came out, right? I mean, I was still an active member, and I just remember.
For those who don't know, what is Nahum and NHM? Just explain that.
Well, Nahum is mentioned in the Book of Mormon as a burial place that the Lehi and the company are traveling through at a certain point. They bury
when they're still in the Middle East before they build their boat, right, and sail to America.
Right, and apparently, I don't know, say 15 years ago, an inscription was found somewhere over in Yemen, maybe, I don't know exactly, that has NHM on it. And using, the type of language you might expect, where vowels aren't used, you could put A and O in there, and there you go. There's Nahum. We have a place, because until then, no Book of Mormon place had been identified. You can't go and see Zarahemla written on the walls of a temple in South America, right? So,
yeah. Go ahead.
What I think other people can express this better than I can. I've read articles on it, but where it falls short, NHM, there's a few reasons why, but one of the things is significance. The Johnson brothers, Chris and Dwayne, I think, they talk about this in one of their videos, where you have to weigh significance of evidence. I would, if you came into a courtroom and said, I believe in the Book of Mormon, NHM, I would count that as evidence. I no longer think it's good evidence, though, but I would count it. I say, sure, whereas I know some ex-Mormons, there's no evidence. No, I would count that. Sure. I just don't think the significance of it is good, because the letters, it could mean a lot of different things, and it's one thing in a huge landscape. There aren't other identifying markers. Like I said, other people can explain that better than I am right now, but what I'll include Chiasmus and NHM as evidence. I no longer think they're very strong evidence, and there's a mountain of evidence on the other side. Sure,
totally. Yeah, and but I do. My view is that there's really no credible evidence that is compelling enough to counterbalance all the overwhelming evidence against both the Book of Abraham and the Book of Mormon. So,
sure. Yeah.
So I think the point of your parody stands.
Me too.
Yeah. So that's brilliant. I loved it. Okay. Well, I want to play the next song, and I'm a little bit worried that we're going to hear double music. So stop or wave at me if you hear double music.
Did anybody in the live?
Yeah, some did and some didn't. It's a little bit weird.
Okay.
But the next song we're going to listen to is Ode to Prophet Joe. What do you want to tell us about that one?
Well, this was straight out of conference the last time, the Tad Callister talk. And like I said before, this whole thing was kind of a lark. I had done the one song, Trying to Be Like Jesus. That was kind of the first inspiration, really, at a certain point. I can talk about that later if you play it later. But all of a sudden, all these other ideas started coming, and I said, all right, my mind, I got to have something to do. And I was on a trip for a few weeks, driving hours and hours, and this Tad Callister talk kept coming up on the news feeds and Reddit and stuff like that. And the thing about it is, again, hopefully I'm conveying his side of it somewhat fairly in the second verse, and then rebutting it in the third verse.
What did you not like about the talk, or what was controversial about the talk?
Well, the idea that Joseph Smith couldn't have written the Book of Mormon. These are a lot of the same things that critics have, I think, shot down, sufficiently many times. I think what bothered me about it especially was knowing that he's not saying these things to the world at large. He's saying it to those 15,000 people in the conference center and to the portion of the 5 million around the world that are listening. And they are becoming inoculated to that idea, or to the idea that what I think is the more accurate idea, that he definitely could have written the Book of Mormon and did. And, so.
Got it. I think I got it.
That's it. Yeah.
So it's about a talk where he tries to make the claim that no Joseph Smith, no human could have possibly written the Book of Mormon.
And there's other things. He didn't have the time to do it. The books that people say the Book of Mormon was inspired by or that he plagiarized some different books. We can talk about some specifics afterwards.
Okay.
Go ahead and fire it up.
All right. Wave at me if you hear two songs playing in parallel.
Okay.
Here we go. This is Ode to Prophet Joe on Straight Outta Cumorah by Weird Alma. Take a listen.
It was the 1st of October, another sleepy general conference day. I had to watch it with my family, who was visiting from far away. I made it through the morning session, didn't care what they were squawking about. But then I heard a talk later, made me wanna poke my eardrums out. I thought I gotta find a baseball bat to smash this stupid TV with.
Conference anger.
When I heard silly old Tad Callister go off defending Joseph Smith. So Tad said to the members from that great and spacious conference stage, well, Prophet Joe never had a lick of brains, and he was of too young an age. Too many names and places, stories and events he couldn't make up himself. And all those books the Book of Mormon rips off were never on his shelf. By the time his talk was over, I knew I would need to drink a fifth. When I heard silly old Tad Callister go off defending Joseph Smith. Now we all know that the Prophet Joe was brilliant and as sly as a fox. But when needed for apologists, well, he was dumber than a box of rocks. And he never had those books, but wait, didn't he read the first chapter of James? Oliver Preacher wrote View of the Hebrews, and Thorne's dictionary had those names. He had the opportunity and time and talent to create that myth. But still that silly old Tad Callister goes off defending Joseph Smith.
All right. That was Ode to Prophet Joe by Weird Alma from the album Straight Outta Compton. All right, tell us just a bit about your faith crisis. What happened? When did it happen? This won't be an in-depth. This is just brief because we want to keep the songs coming. But just tell us. Did you do the mission thing? Did you do the temple marriage thing? Were you in it? Were you ever Orthodox? Give us the 2-minute version of your faith crisis.
Oh boy. Well, faith crisis, but you're asking all this other stuff too. I did not go on a mission. I joined the church at age 20, golden convert, missionaries ringing the doorbell. A little bit of a long story there, but I was ready and waiting for that to happen, looking for something of meaning in my life. And there it was. I was living in Buffalo, New York at the time, up all my life until about 12 years ago. And it amazed me that all of this happened an hour or so from where I lived my whole life. The idea of a personal relationship with God, that you could connect with God personally and individually, and maybe even actually, that was appealing to me, very appealing. And joined the church. I was active for the first year. I was 20, 21 at the time. And then became very inactive for about 5 or 6 years. I was a pretty avid drug user as growing up, and quit that when I joined the church. I wanted to commit. I wanted to say, I'm going to do this 100%, and I did. But then after about a year of still going to bars and still going to parties where people were drinking and doing stuff, I wasn't doing it. But after a while, if you're around it long enough, at some point you're bound to. If you're in a barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut. That's the phrase. So went out, and to make a very long story very short, by the end of that 5 or 6 years, I was a junkie and nearly dead, and went to detox and got essentially my life saved by joining the 12-step program. And at that point, where do I go from here? What do I do? Well, there's, as you know, 12-step programs have, higher power, right? Well, what's my higher power? Oh, maybe I should go back to that church again, right? That I connected with originally. And I did. And boy, I think at the time it was the perfect thing. Being a teetotaling Mormon was, I used to think that was TEA, by the way, but that's not it. But,
right.
Was a perfect match for me at the time, and dove back into life in a huge way, really more than I had before. And met my wife online. This was back in 1999 when that was unusual. Now it's like, I married someone I met on Tinder. It happens a lot these days. But at the time, it was unusual. It was Mormon matchmaker or some kind of thing like that. And she was amazing, and we had we lived a good life for many years. I was always faithful and active. I believed it. I wanted to represent what I felt was true, but I also had little or no interest or patience for cultural doctrine. So I think some of the cracks probably started there. When I seeing some of the social issues in the church, or the way that people, you got to wear white shirts, or you can't watch rated R movies, like all that stuff that just did not make any sense to me. Now, excuse me. Another thing is that when I joined the church, it was 1990. This was before the internet, right? So I feel today like what I was sold is not what the product really was in a lot of ways. And I'm not bitter about that. There's a little resentments about certain things, but James Randi, the magician who he debunks a lot of things, Uri Geller and faith healers and all that. He said, we think we believe what we want to believe. We believe what we need to believe, and I think I needed to believe at the time, but as life went on and the internet came around and I started finding out about different things and the racism and Book of Abraham, all of that stuff. Now what do I do? And I practiced mental gymnastics like many do. For me, the thing is, I had answers for all of those different things. And I use the word answer liberally. I had something that I could maybe use as a way to keep going forward in faith. Okay, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. But you know what? Maybe if God did this, or maybe this thing happened, maybe that could explain that. There's, I don't know, hundreds of things really. But that allowed me to continue forward and be active and faithful. At a certain point, maybe about 3 years ago, I started to realize that all of those different answers could never harmonize. You couldn't take the answer I had for issue number 33 and apply the worldview needed for that to answer number 78, if that makes sense. And there was 300 different things. And that's where it kind of fell apart for me. And I was able to step back and look at the totality of it all and just see, it just makes so much more sense to say that it's just not true. And that it, it was a number of things. You've gone through, you've talked to many, many people who've gone through similar things. For me, I held on to the Book of Mormon the longest. All these other things, the temple ceremony being copied about 80% from Masonry and the Book of Abraham, all these things, all those polygamy issues, it's terrible. The social issues drove me crazy, but still I held on. Maybe the Book of Mormon was what it claims to be, and everything went to hell after that. That's what kept me in for the last couple of years, I would say, until the Book of Mormon just collapsed from all of the other reasons.
Were there particular books or podcasts or websites that were kind of instrumental in your learning all this stuff?
Yeah, your show. And there's an interesting thing is that I remember if you rewound about 4 or 5 years, I'd be like, John Deland, he seems like a nice guy, but I don't know, because I was on the faithful side, and then a weird thing happened about a year or so ago. I was like, oh no, he seems like he's nicer and more casual, and I equated that to two things. Maybe you can tell me after your excommunication, did that kind of take a weight off of you? Off of your life a little bit? Or?
It did. Yeah. I was stuck in this cognitive dissonance of loving it and not wanting to leave it, but feeling guilty and miserable every time I attended. And I don't think I would have ever left. So when the church forcibly excommunicated me, it kind of made that decision for me. But some people would say I've gotten more mean and nasty towards the church after being excommunicated.
I don't think so. For me, like I said, it seemed like it was a two-step thing. On one hand, I think maybe, and I was speculating, maybe you just felt more free, but also I had changed, that changes my perception of you. But your interview with Sandra Tanner, I couldn't even listen to that at first. I wouldn't allow myself to listen to that. Right. And then later I did at a certain point, and I said, oh my gosh, she is a wonderful lady and speaks so much sense. So that was one of the things. The other big thing was Mormon Expression. the transoceanic vessel episode. A lot of people know what that is, and that was right at the very, very end of it, and that was the final nail. There were a lot of nails. That was the final one, and also, the concept of the Book of Mormon being pieced together. There's a lot of original stuff in there too, I think, but also I actually read the Book of Mormon for the first time through ever in 2015. I had never actually done it before, and that didn't help. Usually people say, "Oh, read the Book of Mormon; it'll strengthen your faith." It really didn't, because everything I was reading why am I recognizing this phrase in First Nephi from a phrase in the New Testament? And it's littered with that kind of thing, and then the character of Jesus, when he, this is the Jesus of Nazareth who just had forgiven people who crucified him, and now he's reveling in the death and destruction of tens of thousands in Third Nephi. That was jarring, really jarring. And I remember having these weird, like, something is not right, and I had a hard time articulating some of it until I read B.H. Roberts' book, Studies of the Book of Mormon. Mm-hmm. I like recommending that to members, because he was a general authority, died as an active member still, but boy, he does not pull punches on the Book of Mormon or Joseph Smith when you dig into it there. So that was May or so of 2016, transoceanic vessel. That was the final nail. I remember walking my dog one night right after hearing that, and kind of thinking about all this stuff, and this it was a very moment of clarity, of feeling almost like people would say, "Oh, I felt the Spirit" in that moment, where suddenly, oh, it's not true. Okay. And realizing that I have to accept that, and what does that mean? And have I wasted the last 26 years of my life? No, I haven't. But, now what? And so that was the big question after that point. But that's how it broke down for me.